Over the years, Nintendo has made a lot of amazing games. There's Mario, Zelda, and plenty of other smaller games that you've probably never heard of. No matter what, you can almost always pick a Nintendo game out of a crowd. Its silly, friendly, and interactive gameplay can always be singled out. But what happens when this isn't the case? Even in goofy, family-friendly games like Mario, there are always bound to be some spooky exceptions to this lightheartedness. Most likely, the first thing that you think of when you hear the word Mario is big red mushrooms or stomping on turtles, but as soon as the word spooky is thrown into the mix, you likely immediately think of the booze. With the exception of Dry Bones and Evil Piano and a few others, boos are really the only scary entities in Mario. They slowly chase after you as you turn your back to them, and they laugh and cackle at you from the shadows as they creep up to you. There is, however, a much more terrifying, ghostly monster within this franchise. These especially creepy variants, the Black Boos. These malevolent boos are much bolder and come running up to you, and they have long, hanging tongues that grab and try to reel you in, showing just how hungry they are. It's even creepier since the sky around them is littered with the screaming souls of the unknown dead, smothering the sky in the place of clouds. The areas they roam are littered with piles of bones and skeletal corpses. Many times you barely escape death from these monsters by running madly for the Power Star, knowing that these starving creatures are eager to devour Mario, adding a deeper sense of dread to these levels. It's terrifying when you sit down and wonder, why are these ghosts like this? How did these boos become so much more powerful, more dangerous, and worst of all, so much hungrier than normal boos? The normal white boos don't seem too scary, aside from the fact that they're ghosts. In Mario Galaxy 2, in one of the ghost levels in World 3, the boos even have a sense of humor, posting on a sign, "Definitely don't look at the boos." When I was 6 or 7 and first played the game, I believed it, and never looked at the boos because I thought they would catch me or something if I did. It was even scarier because in one particular area of the level in Mario Galaxy 2, where you're running from the boos and the one big boo, you can get stuck in between the carpets as you trip, being forced to watch as the boos inevitably catch up to you, adding a sense of helplessness and being trapped to the level, which was already terrifying enough with just the boos and the dark atmosphere. Back to the main part of the theory though. Why are the black boos so much different from the regular ones? I want to emphasize especially the fact that they appear more malevolent and hungrier than the normal boos. This is shown by their deranged look, long tongue, and explosive traits. If we look at the meaning of the word boo, it appears to be a Greek word meaning to cry aloud. This name fits them well, since they constantly scream and laugh at you. The black boos, however, lack these emotions. They never laugh or express emotions like normal white boos do. The only sounds that they make are a scream when they perish, and the singular sound effect of crying, played over and over as they chase you. It's as if these boos had experienced greater grief or stress than normal boos, forcing them into such sorrow that they cry out in madness. If we look at boos, the closest thing we can compare them to mythologically are ghosts or spirits. The Japanese version of this would be yokai. Yokai can be any spirit from either an animal or human that simply can't pass on to the next life because of feelings of attachment to the world, either love, hatred, or other strong emotions or regrets. In the end, regardless of the reason, a malevolent yokai becomes evil because of feelings of hatred or emptiness. Unable to pass on, it has no choice but to seclude itself or terrorize people. Whether boos are more like ghosts or yokai is debatable, but we know that they do share some of the qualities of both, and for certain, they are trapped in this existence, and would go through the same process, with the same feelings of emptiness, eventually being driven mad. Now, before we continue, you may be wondering, why would we be talking about Japanese folklore and yokai? Well, the reason is because Mario is a game made in Japan, published by a Japanese company, and originally designed by a man named Shigeru Miyamoto, who happens to be Japanese. With this insight, we can compare our theory to some of the other popular ideas about yokai and ghosts, as well as some of the most influential video entertainment programs that focused on it. Since Miyamoto's full-time job was coming up with ideas for video entertainment for one of the biggest video entertainment companies in the world, it's very likely that he would have been influenced by some of the popular ideas and shows of the time, that focused on ghostly creatures when designing characters and enemies. Since the game was released in May of 2010, you can look at some of the shows revolving around ghosts and spirits that were popular around this time, and a few years earlier. One of the biggest shows around the time that fit this category was Bleach. In this show, the spirits of people that die either become satisfied with the lives they lived and pass on, or they remain in the world, inevitably becoming a hollow, which is a spirit driven mad by rage and emptiness until its consciousness is gone and all that remains is a feeling of hunger, which it satisfies by consuming other spirits, or even humans. Our boos would be comparable to these creatures. A hollow that becomes even more depraved and develops an even greater sense of emptiness, eventually consumes other hollows and continues down this path of hopelessly trying to fill itself. These black boos could be compared to these hollows, or evil spirits. Now, unless the all-knowing Wikipedia is wrong, this explanation of how malevolent spirits and yokai are born is pretty much spot on. According to the original game manual for Super Mario, the toads in the original Mario game were once normal people. The blocks, coins, and power-ups such as the Big Mushroom and Starman were also once normal people that were transformed by the evil Koopa tribe's dark magic. As far as we can see, the origin of the boos is up for debate. They may have always been boos, just like the Koopa were always Koopas, ever since they transformed themselves with dark magic. Or they may have once been people, just like the toads. What if these boos were being forced into servitude by Bowser's dark magic and forced to harm their own people? Just imagine the sense of dread that would give someone, having to haunt your own people on behalf of the tribe that terrorized you and made you into a monster? The toads are also terrified of the boos. This fills the boos with emptiness. It is as if their old friends were so disgusted and terrified at them that they wouldn't even look at them. Now, whenever you refuse to look at the boos and acknowledge their humanity, they become enraged and attack in their madness. And when Mario looks upon them, the last bits of human consciousness within them are awakened, completely paralyzing them with the shock and realization of what they have become. What about the black bomb boos? We can clearly see that the white boos possess human emotions. They laugh and cry, and even make jokes occasionally. But when we take a look at these black boos, all we see is malevolence and the intent to kill. We see no evidence of any human qualities, and if we didn't associate them with their more human counterparts, we would likely conclude that they were just mindless, ghostly enemies, no different from animals, and certainly not humans. And that is the point. We can clearly see the resemblance between these two types of boos, and it's fairly safe to assume that these darker, more malevolent boos were likely no different from the other boos at some point. It is likely that these black bomb boos, which are darker, hungrier, and more empty than their white boo counterparts, were simply the ones that were forced to carry out Bowser's orders to a more extreme degree. They were the ones who didn't just guard and haunt areas, keeping Mario and the other toads out. Instead, they were the ones that had to attack and even kill toads. The boos do indeed attempt to kill Mario. They go to such extremes as to sacrifice themselves in suicidal attempts to blow him up, and he occasionally turns into a skeleton when defeated, showing the enemy's intent to kill, so it would make perfect sense that they would also attempt to not just scare, but truly attack and murder normal toads as well, in order to spread Bowser's terror. These boos have been driven mad, far past anything any other boo has experienced. Their only way to cope with this stress is to shut off their human emotions, giving up their humanity in order to save themselves from the pain of knowing what they have been forced to do. Eventually, they reach the end when fighting Mario. As he boldly looks into their eyes, the last bits of their humanity flood back to them, and when their mind is simply unable to remain stable any longer as they fight their own kingdom and friends, they are overcome by their grief, giving up their lingering attachments to this world, and violently dematerializing as they slip away into the world that their spirit should have gone to in the first place. Are these boos ever satisfied at the end of it all? And what about the boos forced to remain that Mario doesn't defeat? They simply remain clinging to their ghostly shell, agonizing in their loneliness. This is the dark fate of the boos. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. It's a completely free way to help me out that only takes a few seconds, and you can always change your mind later. With that, I'm logging off, and I hope you have a nice day.